And welcome to this week's informative episode of your favorite program, Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Mbukeli lolu-ke uhlelo phela olunipha ulwazi mayelana namalungelo enu as consumers la eNingizimu Afrika. Uhleli nomajali uMangcolosi. Mbukeli ngithi nje kuwena hlala nathi njengoba phela namhlanje ke sikulethela udaba olusemqoka kakhulu oluthinta impesheni yakho nokuthi iphephe kangakanani ezandleni zabe government employees. Pension fund. If you want to know, Mbukeli, how secure your pension fund is in the hands of the government employees pension fund, then this is the discussion that you certainly don't want to miss. Remember, we're live on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure, as well as on the SABC Plus app. Maduzane nje, I will be opening up those lines nisithinte la studio kwamanje asingene nishiqe odabeni lethu namhlanje. Yebo Mbukeli, manje ke ukukhuluma nathi phela ngokuthi izimali zenu zempesheni ziphephe kangakanani phansi kwe-Government Employees Pension Fund noma i-GEPF. Asamukele ivakashi zethu namhlanje. Sina uButsifiso Sibiya, yena ke ephelezelwa nguButsmanga Selemeni, bobabili Mbukeli babuya kuyona i-GEPF. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to both of you. Thank you so much ukuthi nisijoyine namhlanje Butsmanga. Welcome back kunjani?
Sawona msasazi nababukeli emakhaya.
Yebo Butsifiso, wena ngiyezwa ukuthi uyafika uyaqala ngqa ukuba nathi namhlanje. Sakwamukela ohlelweni.
Ngiyabonga mina. Good afternoon to all the viewers and sijabulile ukubala.
Siyabonga kakhulu. Okay Mbukeli, ukhumbuleke ukuthi lolu ke uhlelo esibambisene nalo ke ne-GEPF ukuthi sikwazi ukunisiza ngeindaba zenu zama pensions. I will be opening up those studio lines in a short moment, but basically let's first understand i-topic ya namhlanje. Butsmanga, maybe just usichazele kabanzi ukuthi mesithi iphephe kangakanani imali yama members wenu kwi-scheme senu i-GEPF, ngoba siyezwa kuthiwa kunama false reports whereby abantu or financial planners balutha ama-members wenu ukuthi athathe imali zempesheni bayikhiphe kunina bahambe bayofaka elsewhere in other private investments. Awusichazele ukuthi sikhuluma ngani?
Yebo msasazi, today we are going to be talking about the financial wellness of the GPF. And this flows from what we have come to understand to be some myth out there by financial advisors who poach on our members, encouraging them to resign out of the GPF with an understanding that outside of the GPF they will be able to grow their money tenfold in leaps and bounds. But what we want to explain is that it is not necessarily true, because the difference between outside of the GPF and within the GPF is that in the GPF, members have invested risk-free.
Okay.
Which means their money is guaranteed, while outside, their money will then be subjected to the fluctuations of the markets. Hence, today I am with Res Fiso, who is our head of investment, who will explain kwabanzi ukuthi what is this investing risk-free within the GPF.
So maybe let's start there. I mean, when we talk about persuasion, ama members when ukuthi basuke balutheke bayo invest with private investors, how prevalent is this practice, and who are the targets? Or bani laba targets? Why?
So our understanding is that it's members who are potentially, feeling unsafe about the investments at the GPF, who are probably unsure as well and misinformed, right? So what will happen is that they will be inundated with information or misinformation, I would call it, that your money is not safe at the GPF. And therefore, take this insurance policy, resign, and take your money to another service provider. But what we found is that in doing that, the pension that you'll get is lower, number one. And then number two, as Usman Asakazile, it's subject to fluctuations in the market.
So it's not risk-free as opposed to i-scheme saying.
Yeah.
Mawuthi risk-free, Butsfisa uchaza ukuthini nje, uchazela ubaba ekhaya, umuntu one-pension okade uthisha, ufuna ukwazi ukuthi mengithi i-investment yami kwi-GEPF, it's risk-free. Kuchaza ukuthini lokho?
So what it means is that kunesiqiniseko ukuthi uzoyithola imali abamthembise yona. So that's essentially it. So what happens is that there's the GPF is a defined benefit fund.
Okay.
So lokho kusho ukuthi a member can calculate beforehand how much money they'll get at retirement. So that is calculated using a formula. So that formula depends on the service that they have, the pensionable salary that they have towards the retirement, and it's also due to a factor, an actuarial factor there. Okay. So I won't explain gratuity, annuity, local, we can get to that if we want. But what I want to say is that the pension money is calculated according to a formula, regardless what happens to the economy, investment markets, etc. They'll get that money that's been allocated to them. So hence we use the term risk-free in the sense that they'll get that money noma kanjani.
Okay. But manga indaba ama-members wenu misinformed ngizwe uButsfiso ethi laba baluthekayo eventually ukuthi bakhiphe imali zabo investa elsewhere. These people are misinformed. Do you not have schemes whereby you are constantly and continuously making sure ukuthi nikeza ama-members wenu the correct information?
Look, the correct information is there. Now, we do share it with our members.
Yeah, by understand.
But remember, people out there are looking for an extra cent.
Yes.
So if you come to them and say, okay, let me make this example. Just 2 weeks or so ago, there's a person who was forced to, in Limpopo, there was a news report where a person was forced to resign, take out 800,000 yakhe. Then he was told, no, go put it somewhere there with this pastor that will pray for it and then it will grow tenfold. And dugu, that money got lost, all of it. So it's not about a lack of information from us.
Okay.
It's how these people are then made to believe whatever they are told, because that's what they want to hear at that point.
Okay. So is this process even legal? This practice, is it legal ukuthi abantu basuke from their private investment firms bazo approach abantu benu that are already within the scheme ukuthi ene baba seduce ukuthi bayo investor nabo?
So, well, South Africa is a free country.
Yeah.
But
we've got policies in place.
Yes, what's not allowed is mis-selling.
Okay.
When you sell on the basis of false information. But that said, people are allowed and enabled to make the decisions that they want.
Okay.
What we can do as the GPF is arm them with information to say that should you decide to withdraw your money, these are the outcomes. In Pumela Corner, it will be this, this, and that. And then they'll make an informed decision whether to stay or take their money.
I mean, do you then allow our members? Would you even advise them ukuthi ingcono imali yabo ukuthi iphume eschemini senu because of better benefits elsewhere? I don't think that's the practice.
Look, the GPF is one of the best pension funds, second to none, and I would want Usfiso to get into how is their money invested in the GPF vis-a-vis
a
on
private
the outside,
investment firm,
and
yes.
what then makes us the best pension fund compared to those that are not part of the GPF.
So Butsfiso ulahlela kuwena uButsmanga lama questions uthi wena ophethe yonke le information. Let's talk about that. I mean, talk to us about ukuthi many ilokhuzana the risk factor iyaphuma if umuntu they actually stay nani. Talk to us about that and how do you then keep up ilokhuzana ama members when privy to this information by also making sure ukuthi ba understand the products and services that you have.
Okay, so maybe what I'll start with is explaining the principles of an investment strategy.
Yeah.
So the first part, Yakona, is what's called an asset liability modeling study. So what they do there, you have people such as myself, you calculate and project how much assets in the pension fund would be going in future.
Okay, hold that thought, Fiso, because ngifuna uyibekisise kahle le ndaba bakuzwe bonke emakhaya. Bukela, I'm going to take my quick ad break. Uma ngibuya ke I'll be opening those lines ungasithinta la e-studio. Those numbers 011-714-0671, alternatively 714-0672. consumer@sabc.co.za is our email address. You can interact with us on our social media platforms. We're back shortly after this. Nganda. Welcome back. Izingcingo zethu ke seyivuliwe namhlanje. You can call us on 011-714-0671, alternatively 714-0672. You can send us a WhatsApp to 060-844-9857, alternatively sithumele email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or sithole futhi on our social media platforms. Mbukeli, this is a GEPF sponsored show in collaboration with GEPF. Mbukeli sikufundisa ukuthi yini wena ekumele uyazi ukuthi ugculisa ukuthi imali yakho i-safe ezandleni zayo i-GEPF. My guest today, uBhuti Sifiso Sibiya. He is the GEPF Head of Investments alongside uButsmanga Selemeni. He is the GEPF Communications Manager. Butsmanga, I mean, we know ukuthi ama pension funds around the world ake abanenkinga, and as a result, many pension funds had actually faced funding shortfalls since the value of our pension fund assets could not meet the fund's obligations to amalokhuzana, ama beneficiaries. Is it then possible to say that GEPF money or reserves will see to the financial needs of its members moving forward? Angeke niphelelwe imali yokuthi nikhokhele abantu benu.
So the GPF's funding level is currently at 110%. So what that means is that the assets, impahla noma itshalo mali yakhona, is above the liabilities or equalate by 110%. So for every 100 rand of liability, we have 100 rand of assets plus 10 spare.
Okay.
So the assets cover the liabilities. The GPF has had a funding ratio of 100% since 2004, actually, and that we took over in 1996, where the funding level was at 72%.
Okay.
So the GPF has actually grown as a fund. It's better and well managed at this particular point in time.
What do you want to add when Butsmanga lapho as a preferential choice? Siyazi ngithi ukuthi we need to remind abantu ukuthi i-GEPF unsebenza ngama employees are under government. So all the time we need to keep that emqondweni.
I think from what Usfiso is explaining is that members out there need to be comfortable that at any given point, there will never be a point where the GPF is broke or unable to pay that which is due to them because of our funding level. If we have 110%, we are at 110% funding level, it therefore means even if they can all want their money now, we will pay them and still be left with change because we've got more than what is required to fund all our financial obligations.
That's very interesting indeed, because sibonile lapha nge-COVID, even ama-insurance bebephelelwe imali ukuthi baservice ama-debts, ama-lokhuzana, ama-funds for ama-clients wabo. So Sifiso, do private and public sector institutions then invest in the same way, or if GEPF ngwenza differently, how do you do it differently? How are you different from, say, the other popular means of private investments?
Okay, so what I'll say is that pension funds all invest according to their investment obligations, right? And obligations differ by pension fund. So GPF being a defined benefit fund, our obligation is to meet a liability which is a defined benefit in nature. So our investment strategy is crafted as such. Some pension funds, particularly in the private sector space, mostly are what's called defined contribution funds. So that causes the investment strategy to be different. Another thing to consider when you look at the difference between private sector and public sector funds is that the regulations are fine, right? Imthetho yakhona ayifani. Your private sector funds are regulated by what's called the Pension Funds Act, and the investment strategy is regulated by Regulation 28. GPF does not have that regulation. It has GEP law. That is a different set of regulations. So when you think of that, Tuguti, pension funds invest according to the obligations that they have and also the regulations that apply, then it means that the investment strategies will be different.
Okay. All right. And then, so what is a defined benefit if ungasichazela? Does it mean no matter what, ngizohlale ngithola lento engiyitholayo, of course, excluding leya tax esasikhulume ngayo noBhutsmanga ukuthi the only set of imali ongeke uzuyithola at the end of your pension is when it will be taxed, because isazotax?
Yeah. So a defined benefit fund is one where the benefit is defined at the outset, right? So kunesiqiniseko ukuthi uthola leyo mali and it's calculated according to the formula. Like we discussed earlier, ukuthi that benefit or pension is dependent on your service, on your final pensionable salary, and an actuarial factor. So that's a defined benefit fund. So what's good about a defined benefit fund is that that benefit that you are promised has to be paid, regardless what happens. So all the investment risk that happens, the sponsor takes that risk on your behalf, which is the employer. And in this particular case, it's the government. So whatever happens, be it the economy or investment returns, whatever, the pension will be paid.
Okay.
For a defined benefit fund, yeah.
And then, but Smanga, then is it wise to encourage abantu, particularly laba abasebenza kwilokhuzana ku-government, ukuthi bonke ba-invest in GEPF rather than trying to seek amanye ama-means ngaphandle ama-private investments?
Yes, we continue making that point that there's no reason for you to ukuthatha yonke imali yakho
We keep.
uresign uye kwi-private sector. Rather, it is much better than to then have more than one source of income by remaining in the GPF, get a pension for life, and whatever little that you get as part of a gratuity, you can then invest it on the outside, so that much better on the outside. You then have a GPF continue to pay you, because Tina sizokubhadala for as long as you are alive. Imali yakho ayipheli kuthi.
Okay.
Whereas in the outside, mayiphela bavela baxoshe bakuthumele kusasa uyothola impension kasasa.
Very interesting indeed. So Sifiso, maybe just to revisit this point again, I know ukuthi we've discussed it before. Hlampe kwakukhona uBhutsmanga ukuthi ma resign actually ku-government, you're not going to get the total amount, pensionable amount obuzoyithola versus umuntu oqede umsebenzi naturally wa retire at the retirement age, of which I think is what, 63 or 65 years like South Africa. Yeah.
So what
already may keep umuntu a resigner, already it's going to have a knock-on effect ukuthi you're not going to get leso samba vele that you were going to get eventually.
Yeah, so I think what people would have to remember is that there's no free lunch. What you take now, you won't have in the future.
Yeah.
So that's the basic principle. first, and then secondly, over and above that is there's the law of compounding. Yeah. So whatever difference exists now, in future, it will be higher. So when a person exits, they will get a resignation benefit. And that benefit will be calculated using a set of formulas, actuarial factors, and they'll get an actuarial value. That will be smaller than when they stay in the fund up until retirement and exit at that particular point in time.
Okay.
And the difference, Akona, maybe okugcineni, is that the money that they'll get good as a resignation benefit will be
Much
yoba
less.
isamba semali, to be
Yeah.
a lump sum. But at retirement, they'll get two things. So they'll get a lump sum, which is called a gratuity, and they'll also get an annuity after that, which is an annual or a monthly pension after that.
All right.
So it's much better to stay up until retirement.
Eish, sizofaka ukusebenza la kwa-government soze si-retire sina 65 mbukeli. Those lines are wide open. Remember, ungasithinta la studio. Communicate with us on our social media platforms. We're coming back shortly after this. Ungayindawo. Welcome back. 0117140671, alternatively 7140672. Izingcingo zethu ke ongasithinta ngazo la e-studio. You can also send us an email to consumer@sabc.co.za. Alternatively, interact with us on our social media networks. Mbukeli, this is a show esiyenza ke in collaboration ne-GEPF lapho sinifundisa kabanzi phela ngama-investment wenu nina eniphansi kweskimu i-GEPF ukuthi impesheni zenu into esigxile kuyona namhlanje ukuthi why and how should you then know ukuthi imali yakho isafe ezandleni ze-GEPF. My guest today was Fiso Sibiya, GEPF Head of Investments, alongside uBoots Manga Selemeni, is the GEPF Communications Manager. So Fiso, when we went to break, you were explaining ukuthi kunama benefits umuntu awatholayo uma retire versus resign. So then to bring it home, let's talk about how GEPF has then been performing, because I think I spoke about it earlier. There was a lot of turbulence in the markets, nama fluctuations of which got esikhuluma ngawo if uthatha investment yakho engekho risk free njengeyenu uyisa kwilokhuzana kwi-private investor, then obviously if kuukuthi market iyawa lapho you stand a chance yokuthi uluze yonke investment yakho. So nina navigate kanjani ukuthi nikwazi ukuthi on top of everything that was happening, we saw with COVID ukuthi a lot of our companies went under, our reserves were depleted. How did you navigate around those choppy waters?
No, thanks for that. So I'll talk about maybe a couple of incidents in terms of how we are navigating. But I'll say the general principle that applies is diversification of the investment strategy. So I'll first of all start with around 2000. There was obviously the dot-com bubble, and there was a severe contraction that happened in financial markets. I think globally there was a decline of about 53%.
53, yeah.
And in South Africa it was around 15%, right? In those instances, if you're a GPF member and you retired, you would have gotten the pension that you were promised without any of that factor. So moving then on to the 2008 financial crisis, where globally as well, you had a decline of about 43%, and locally a decline of 25%. Our assets were impacted as well. I think we reduced about 10%. But with all of that, whatever pension you were promised, you were getting that, right? And then I'd say maybe moving fast forward to COVID, which is more recently when I think the markets also tanked. They reduced by about 13%. And our assets, even if there was a reduction of about 13%, the next year there was a rebound of about 23%. But even through all of that, you would have gotten the pension that you were promised. So I think then the common thread here is that whatever promise you were made, by the defined benefit. So that's why I was saying it's risk-free through all the market turbulence that happened. you would have gotten the pension that you were promised.
Very interesting. But Smanga, talk to this because I know even here SABC bekunabantu that were forced ukuthi bathathe ilokhuzana ama-pension wabo ama-retirement. How does that then affect ilokhuzana i-pension yomuntu versus umuntu obefuna ukuretire say maybe 2 or 3 years later?
You see, what Sifiso has just explained shows how
it's non-reliant on any factors.
Yes,
Noma ngathiwa resign kusasa, yithini esithi resign, but imali yakho uzoyithola iyisamba. As long as wena you don't take the decision ukuthi you are retiring or resigning today.
And also, it then shows ukuthi that which we promise you as the GPF, you'll end up getting that which you were promised, provided you go on retirement with the GPF. For instance, if you were in the private sector and a situation efana ne-COVID, for most people who were invested outside, what COVID did was that it reduced their investments. But for members of the GPF, they got what they were promised without any reduction. So it then does not explain why would then a financial advisor say, get out of the GPF, come to us, we'll grow your money.
Very interesting that you mentioned that because it's free. So, yiphi-ke nje i-advice oyinikeza umuntu who is going to or about to sit down with a financial advisor, as uPutsmanga is saying?
So I'd say, first of all, get into contact with the GPF itself.
Okay. Before contacting the financial advisor, what do you have? What are your benefits? What is the way forward?
And then secondly, then be informed. Watch ama shows njengalena and ask the necessary GPF officials to explain the benefits that are available to you. Because what I would find is that maybe a lot of the decisions are made from maybe lack of trust, because the GPF is a government employees pension fund, so many people may mistrust government and as a result may want to take their money. But what we are saying today is that the GPF is resilient as a pension fund, and you will get the benefit that you are promised.
And then, Butsmanga, then, in terms of flexibility on GEPF side, how flexible are you? Let's say Alicia decides ukuthi angisafuna ukusebenza ku-government sector, I got a better job kwilokhuzana kwi-private sector. Can I still keep my pension with GEPF, but ngisebenza on the private sector, ngiqhubeka ngi-accrue ama-benefits in that instance?
No. Remember, as the name suggests, the GPF covers only
when
government employees at the level of national and provincial spheres.
Yes.
Now, if you exit that part, if you exit those two sectors, you cannot be a member of the GPF.
Okay.
That's what makes the difference. But now, here, what we are discussing is where you are then told, get out, because there are problems. There are no problems within the GPF. So what we trying to get into members of the GPF is that there is no any other better fund than your fund that you are in now in the form of the GPF.
Okay. All right. And then, Sfiso, like that analogy that I just made, Uguti, anything can happen in life in ufuna ukshincha. In terms of flexibility, kuma policies that are inherent currently, niyakwazi ukuthi ni advise umuntu then to say, okay, sharp, even though you are no longer in the government sector, but imali yakho you can still keep it invested with us, even though usebenza kwenye indawo. Ngiyamuzwa uPutsmanga uthi you have to be a member. But then, is there a way of saying I will keep my investment here and I will still accrue ama benefits on that front, even though angisalokhuze angifuna ukuyikhipha imali yami lapho eyisamba up until mase ngidecide ukuthi sengiright manje ngayithatha?
So it is possible to leave your benefits there.
Okay.
But you will not accrue over time.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
Because, as mentioned, the benefit depends on service. So the service that you get, Mauyega, will not apply. So it will be the service that you had, Mauyega, it will not grow.
Okay.
And the salary calculation will be as at the time you left.
Okay.
So you can leave a benefit there, go elsewhere, but it won't grow. It won't accrue. So the benefit also you'll start accruing a new benefit elsewhere.
Okay. And then I will get whatever I was left with at the time of my resignation.
But it won't be a resignation benefit at that time.
Okay.
It would be treated as a resignation according to the actual factors at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very interesting. Mbukeli nawe if confused ufuna ukwazi ukuthi i-GEPF why it they are the best scheme for government employees ukuthi ni save ama pensions wenu. Do you call us, send us those emails? We're back shortly after this and going down. The topic today is imali yakho isafe kangakanani phela ezandleni zayo i-GEPF. Ungasifonela la e-studio Mbukeli nazi i-number zami lapho on the strap. You can also get in touch with us via email as well as on our social media platforms. My guest still uButsfiso Sibiya, GEPF Head of Investments, alongside uBut Ismanga Selemeni, the GEPF Communications Manager. Let's go to the lines now. Siye kuSisnomsa all the way in Standerton. Sisnomsa sakwamukela ntokazi ohlelweni singakusiza kanjani namhlanje?
Ngiyaphakuzana bengizombuza nje owodwa nekububhuti lapho ukuthi ngabe iqiniso kangakanani ukuthi if umuntu aya epensionini ne makathatha imali yakhe ayisa ku-annuity abamtaxi ne mangabe ngifuna ukuya ku-pension because ngani ngisebenza ku-government but ngifuna ukuya ku-pension ngiyayisusa ngiyisa ku-annuity fund, any annuity fund, angeke bangitest from GPF, ngizoyithola injalo.
Okay, so ufuna
ukuhlala sizizwa zisikhulunya, so sengifuna ukuzwa kahle ngoba kunabantu aba-relevant lapho.
Okay.
Ngabe iqiniso na.
Sisnomsa ubambe nje kanjalo ungadrop ucingo in case uButsfiso has more questions for you. Butsfiso ungakhuluma noSisnomsa uyabuza ukuthi usebenza naye ku-government but uyabuza ukuthi mesethatha ipension yakhe eyisa ku-annuity fund, does it still maintain le kade siyigrilla ukuthi there is no risk factor kulokhu ku-investment yakhe?
So maybe we'll explain ukuthi at retirement as a member of the GPF, there's two benefits also zithola. Kune gratuity, which is a lump sum or isamba semali. Then there's an annuity, which is a constant amount of money that you'll get. Kule gratuity layer, right? Some of it will be taxed, some of it will not, right? So it depends on the tax table at a particular point in time. I think at 350 at some point. The first 350 of that lump sum, umuyithola, will be tax-free. And if the lump sum that you get is below 350, so it's only tax-free. But if it's above, the first 350 of it will be taxed.
Okay.
And then, guleo mali say taxiwe, then you can maybe buy an annuity. But if you retire within the GPF, you'll then still get the annuity that you have.
Okay.
Right? So I think that's the first distinction. If the decision is to retire at the end, you'll still get an annuity with GPF. And you'll get a lump sum. That lump sum may be taxed if it's above the tax-free rate.
Okay.
But if you resign or withdraw, right, you will be taxed. There's also a tax-free amount, but it's very low. So you resign, which means you exit before retirement. You will be taxed. I forget the actual amount much, but the tax rate is higher, and the tax-free allocation yakona incipile as well. So that's a decision that they would need to take. It is better to retire within the GPF, and if the member does want to buy an additional annuity with the lump sum abazoyithola, they can still do that at the end.
Sisnomsa, are you still on the line? Sisnomsa? Okay, I think we've lost uLokhuzana uSisinomsa on the line because I wanted to see if we understand Butsfiso ngendlela oyibeke ngayo ukuthi there is a difference between mau retire and resign. So Butsmanga, yes, do you want to add something?
But the issue about what Sisinomsa is raising is the lie that they normally are being told
yes.
that if you transfer from the GPF into a private pension fund, you will not be taxed. Yes, of course, you will not be taxed because it's not going into your pocket. But when you take it from there to your pocket, it will be taxed. So it's more like you are postponing the inevitable. You cannot run away from tax. Whether when you move it from the GPF to a private pension fund, you will not be taxed. But from a pension fund to your pocket, you will be taxed. In as much as when you move it from, when you are resigning and you're getting it from the GPF into your pocket, you will be taxed. So you can't run away from tax.
Oh, okay. So it's about tax regardless. Maybe add a bit more context Leo as Fiso, because I think a lot of people might have non-clarity around that issue.
Around the tax.
Yes.
Transfer.
I-transfer ukuthi misuka njengoba esho uBhutsmanga ukuthi isuka ku-investment to investment or isuka kwilokhuzana kwi-fund iya ephaketheni lomuntu.
Yes, so for every time you get money from a pension fund, there's a tax that will be applicable, right? And obviously if you are getting that money at retirement, the tax rate is lower versus when you are resigning.
Okay.
So the tax rate is higher as well. So that's the first point. Secondly is if you are transferring from one annuity to another, because you don't get the money.
Yes.
It doesn't get taxed, as Usmanga was saying.
We are sure
right?
If it's not exchanging hands.
Yes, it's not exchanging hands, your hands in particular.
So
it's from one annuity provider to another annuity provider. It won't get taxed. But I would say it depends on people's individual circumstances.
And what could those be? So what are the different scenarios where umuntu angathola ukuthi use taxed even though kuthiwa if kuthi suka from annuity to annuity, it's not going to be taxed?
Yeah, so tax is a tricky thing. And I'm no tax expert.
And it's not calculated by the standard like.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and individual tax matters of members differ, right? So if a person's earning another income, there may be other tax applicable, even if they're earning another income and they're getting a pension.
Yeah.
It's a totally different circumstance.
Side hustles, yes.
Yeah, and as well, it depends as well if, for example, if a person's retiring, when they retire, ngipazothola the gratuity and an annuity. From the gratuity part, they may be taxed if it's above the tax-free limit. On the annuity, they will be taxed, but it's at a lower rate as well.
I see. Very interesting. But I understand abantu lokho Butsmanga. Like I've been asking ukuthi, do you have awareness campaigns that you actually embark on as a GEPF where you just say bantu bakwethu amalokhuzana ama members nama beneficiaries wabo ithini sinbize sinitshela ukuthi these are some of the benefits and reasons why you should be staying with the GEPF?
Look, for the GPF purposes.
All right, ibambe kanjalo Butsmanga, because I want to take a break. Khona uzosichazela kahle. Bukeli, we're going to take another quick ad break. Siyabuya. We're still talking about the safety yemali yakho phakathi kwayo iGEPF. Ungayindawo Bukeli. Welcome back. Yilungelo Lakho live on SABC 1 in Mzansi for sure, Nagu SABC Plus. This show is of course in collaboration with GEPF. My guest today, Butsfiso Sibiya, the GEPF Head of Investments, alongside Butsmanga Selemeni, the GEPF Communications Manager. Butsmanga, you were explaining something about why they should stay nani up until bazaba retire.
Yes, we do have several platforms with we engage with our members.
Okay.
For instance, we will have on a quarterly basis, they receive newsletters from the GPF outlining all of our benefits.
Okay.
We do have campaigns where we go to them face to face in a form of pre-retirement workshops, in a form of road shows.
Okay.
We do have engagements with them as and when we are invited by their unions.
Okay, so unions can also approach you ukuthi nizokhuluma
Yes,
nabo.
yes.
Okay.
That's so we have different platforms with which we engage with them.
Okay, all right. So they just, your members need to know ukuthi those services are there, they can actually utilize them.
Exactly.
Okay, that is good to know. Let's go back to the callers now. Siye ngasekhaya, Anonymous all the way in Durban. Siyakubonga ntokazi ukuthi usijoyine ohlelweni. Singakusiza kanjani namhlanje?
Sanibonani stu.
Kunjani sis?
Ngiyaphila ninjani?
Siyaphila nathi. Ungaqhubeka nje usibuza umbuzo Anonymous?
I'm a government employee now.
Okay.
Okay. Every quarter ngiyayi-check-a ama benefits wami. So last year September ngiyi-check-e ngiyithola ukuthi is this amount. Ngiphinde ngiyi-check-e ngoDecember. ngoJanuary. Mase ngiyi-check-a ngoJanuary isi-less ngo-350,000.
Okay.
And ngafonela ka-GPF ngiyabuza ukuthi how imali yami this amount ngo-December. Ngo-September. Mase ngiyi-check-a after a quarter ngoJanuary this amount isiyehle ngo-350. I didn't get i-answer eyangigculisa. I-answer engayithola bathi angazi bakhuluma ama-terms besibala wrong kwathini. So ngizocela labo obhuti laba obhuti bama bawu-2 basichazele because government employees they are confused ukuthi what happened to the funds akade khona umuntu bakuthola ukuthi mhlawumbe beno-6 figure nipala kahle mhlawumbe no-600,000 akawusekho u-600,000 sekusele u-250,000 u-350 usuhambile. What happened? Because we were not it was not explained to us azothathwa. So nama-union azange azasichazele. So ngicela ukwazi ukuthi what happened, why we were not informed before bethatha leyo mali. Ngiyabonga.
Oh, siyabonga kakhulu Anonymous. But Fiso, hey, you're in hot water.
So I'll explain, Usmanga will add as well.
Yes.
So what I'd want to say to Umama is that imali ayithathwanga.
Okay.
I think let's start there. So what happens is that
But uthi Fiso, when she went to inquire in my offices when about le mali ya disappear, there was a miscalculation somewhere.
okay. So
kwenzeka kanjani
so
lo?
maybe let me start and say that imali ayithathwanga.
Okay.
Right. So what happens every year is that members get benefit statements. And that benefit statement, what it tries to do is to give a value of the pension that they'll get at retirement.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So what we're saying is that the value that you get at retirement, depending on economic circumstances, right? Isimo seimali, like Iran and all of those things, economic circumstances, right? And the value on that is what changes over time. But the pension that they'll get still stays the same.
Okay.
So, for example, Uma Tua, I will give you a cow, for example. In 10 years' time, the value of that cow will change this year versus next year.
Isinenkonyane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kodwa, uma kuphela lo 2 years lo, uzothola inkomo.
Okay. All right.
So the value of what you're given changes from year to year,
All right.
but you still will get that cow.
All right. Unfortunately, Putsmanga, you can't add anything because we are out of time. But bengifuna ukuzwa ukuthi uthini usisi bethi imali nifihlile, but we'll save that for another show. Thank you so much to my guests for their contributions. A very technical show. Namhlanje Mbukeli, thank you so much for our contributions. When my guest today was Uputsfiso Sibiya, GEPF Head of Investments, alongside the Communications Manager Uputsmanga Selemeni. Mbukeli, we're going to leave it there. Sizonibona futhi next week. Sesirapha unyaka ke on Yilungelo Lakho. Thank you so much for joining us. From all of us here, nisale kahle makhaya. Yilungelo